I am so glad to have this chance to chat with you tonight. We're between the holidays, as they say. Christmas is just past and New Year's is on its way. And I want to talk a little bit about my book, and I want to talk a little bit about the whole vibe of A Christmas Carol and Jacob Marley. It's a super hot theme, evidently, and I'm one of the club. So I'd love to tell you a little bit about my book.
When you say it's a super hot theme, what are you talking about?
Well, it just as all media is embracing multiple redos and reduxes and inversions of classic stories, and it is very cool and it's very traditional to borrow from old stories. In this case, I, along with many other entertainment and creative contributors, we are tapping into Charles Dickens' legendary A Christmas Carol, which was first published in 1843. So I've written a novel. It's entitled very simply Jacob, and it was published middle of October 2019, at the tail end of the year that we're filming this. And it is my version, Jacob Marley's rest of the story. The way I've phrased it is, if anyone has ever wondered, well, what about poor old Jacob Marley? This is the story that resolves it and answers it and brings everything full circle.
What is your favorite part of your version of Jacob Marley?
I'm going to have to say it's the thing that resonates with me the most personally, because I, as an art kid, and as I like to say, a creative contributor, an arts advocate, it's about recognizing one's differentness and embracing it and making it the absolute best thing about them. And I have skewed the story to help us understand Jacob and what drove him in his lifetime, which of course had ended by the time A Christmas Carol began, 7 years hence, as the story goes. What drove him to the place that he was at, where he was in such dire need of this redemptive act, which was to save his partner and friend, Ebenezer Scrooge.
You've written other works. This one seems very different from your other material. How did this come about?
Well, it certainly is more optimistic, and it is definitely founded more on traditional fairy tale archetypes. I've dabbled in this all along in my writings, and I like to think that this is one of the most optimistic things I've ever written. And it comes about because I think time and experience and the wisdom that I'm still trying to attain has brought me full circle to the ideas of some of the simplest notions of good and striving for good, and the forgiveness that can happen as a result of it, that is as much a part of our fabric as humans as anything can ever be. And right now we are in a time where even popular culture reflects the dystopian dark all the time. We are fed dark stories, dark alternate sides of everything, that perhaps my version of Jacob Marley's resolution can serve as a positive, maybe almost newer message amidst all of this, while still being entertaining, while still being historically relevant and invoking of things that are time-honored, and reaching back even to such as Shakespeare to help bring that story full circle to satisfy anyone who has been a lover of Charles Dickens, and most particular Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol and Ebenezer Scrooge, and of course our hero, anti-hero, Jacob Marley.
In the introductory section of the book, you make reference to some guy named Lanky B. I need to know all about Lanky B.
Yeah, he's as my husband would say, a fig Newton of my imagination. Lanky B, actually B stands for Berliner. And so I did spend the holidays in Germany. I did spend a year overseas. There is so much in this book that is totally me, in terms of being the diary keeper, the student overseas, everything, But yeah, the lanky Berliner type who worked in the bookshop is just part of the story, or maybe he's not. Maybe he's figment of my imagination. Maybe he's real. I don't know. You can have it be whoever you want it to be.
One of the people who reviewed your book talked about how you seem to be channeling Dickens, the style, the sound, the way that he sounded. Did you have a particular audience in mind when you wrote this?
Wow. As far as audience, that's one part of the question. The other part of the question is how far deep inside of me did I reach to my inspiration? And I'm going to say that goes back to practically a lifelong love of Dickens and his work and the purpose in his works and the beauty of the language and the eloquence, and coming into the English language as a first-generation American, having maybe a little extra awareness of the beauty of the language and its fancies and its manipulations, having fun with it, and using all of that to tell the story. When I wrote it, it was a feverish, wonderful experience. It was one of the most joyous creative experiences I've ever had, and I've done a lot of writing, and so I totally get the feeling of being completely wrapped up in a writing project. But I think it's pretty safe to say that nothing has given me as much joy to write as this story has given me. It's let me tap into my knowledge on history, on art history, on little societal reflections and philosophical things that I hold true and near to my heart. It gave me a chance to sort of dabble in everything that I love and to wrap it up in this very sweet little story.
You have several characters in this book. Is there one with whom you identify the most?
Oh, that's such a fun question. I think the reason to me why A Christmas Carol is such a sublime work is because all of its characters represent these caricatures that represent different aspects about ourselves. It's kind of like if you, for instance, Sex and the City. The women individually have their own issues and are sort of tunnel visioned into what they exist as, but you put it together and then you pair it with New York City as the fifth girl. What you have is this wonderful, well-rounded being. And I think that the characters in A Christmas Carol do exactly that as well. You've got Jacob Marley, you've got Ebenezer Scrooge, you've got Bob Cratchit, you've got Tiny Tim, and then you have everybody else around there, and they all kind of come together and add up into what is the complexity and the simplicity and the darkness and the wonderfulness and the generosity and the miserliness of any single human being. So, I have felt like a Scrooge. I have felt like a Marley. I have felt like a Tiny Tim in moments when I have just been full of gratitude. You know, sometimes we're just happy for no particular reason. And I think that these characters in Dickens' A Christmas Carol are such wonderful, honest archetypes of who we all are as humans, that it gives us this infinite foundation from which we can build characters. So, yeah, I'm going to say I'm probably 50% one and 50% of another, and I'm going to say one of them is going to be the dark Scroogey one or the Jacob type. The other might be the hardworking Bob Cratchit or his wife. So yeah, it's certainly a mix, but I'm going to have to say it can't be a single one because there's a little bit of that in all of us.
The middle part of this book is, when you read through it, it actually has almost like stage direction. Were you thinking about a play, or did you have in mind something like a play for this book?
Totally. So going back in time, especially in British culture, there's a term, it's called mummery. These mummeries were dramatic plays, projects, if you will, and often enjoyed by people of a class that were able to do that, meaning they had the leisure and they had the means to do this, to produce it. This goes all the way up into royalty and the country houses of ages gone by, where stages and theaters existed for this, costuming and everything. it also goes back to something as simple as even Louisa May Alcott's Little Women, the beginning of the story. They're putting a little play, a little performance together as their Christmas celebration. This existed on all levels. I mean, I even remember doing this sort of thing as a child with my sisters over holiday vacations. We'd spend days producing stories and writing and thinking up characters. So back to the nutshell of that. Yes, it is a play. It is a story within a story. Jacob is a denouement, a wrapping up in one act. And it is written as a play, a mummery, a fanciful illustration, as if it were on stage. My goal is that if someone has read my story, they will feel they have watched some special little show on stage that will tuck itself into their mind, that they'll take forward with them into life.
You just said the word illustration, and it reminded me that this volume has some beautiful illustrations in it. Tell us about those.
Well, I like to say that I write with pictures and draw with words. These things are inextricably combined to me personally. I am an illustrator. I am trained in illustration. I've done so much work, architectural renderings, fashion illustration, portraiture, everything. I have such an appreciation for the visual means to relate something. But I wanted to go beyond my own words. I wanted to see what somebody else would interpret. And I also wanted someone else's 100%. If I'm giving 100% to my story as a writer, I would love to see 100% coming from someone else as an illustrator. And not only that, it also means this leap of faith where I had to actually send my manuscript via email to someone whose work I held in high regard. And this was Adam Ohlers, who is a British illustrator, young fellow, super cool. His work is beautiful. My husband and I, we have some of his artwork in our home. And he had happened to post an illustration of Ebenezer Scrooge and Jacob Marley on Instagram. The second I saw that, I said, that is my illustrator. So I reached out to him via email, and he allowed me to send him the manuscript, and how cool it was that he loved the manuscript and agreed to do the illustrations. So yeah, so this story, My Jacob, the book, has original illustrations by Adam Ohlers. And not only that, but in the tradition of the 1843 publication by Dickens, Adam created a beautiful garland motif with my name and the title of the book that is in gold embossed on the cover of the book, exactly in the way that Dickens' A Christmas Carol was done 176 years ago. And it was one of my first thrills to hear back from him when he said he loved the story and that he would be willing to do the work for it. It was an honor to work with him and such a privilege. And I think that his interpretations take my story to another level entirely.
Where do I buy this book?
Well, the easiest access is through Amazon.com. It's available at Amazon. Look up the word Jacob, and my name, Kimann Schultz, is noted as the writer as K.A. Schultz. So type in Jacob K.A. Schultz and you'll find it. I'm from Indianapolis, and so the book is also available, signed copies as a matter of fact. They are at the Indianapolis Museum of Art at Newfields in their gift shop, at the Vonnegut Library on Indiana Avenue, at Indy Reads on Mass Avenue, at the IRT Theater, downtown Indianapolis, and then also at Black Dog Books in Zionsville.
Thank you so much for spending this time with us. We very much appreciated a chance to talk to you about your book. We hope everybody goes out and buys it.
Yeah, me too.
I'm sure they'll enjoy it. I know I did.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks for your time. And yeah, I hope people buy the book. Cheers.